Let's say a prayer. Heavenly Father, we just come again one more time and ask you, your Spirit be here right now. Use me as your mouthpiece, Heavenly Father, and you might be glorified here, and we might be drawn closer to you, and we might have something that we learn that motivates us to go out and share this last message with this dying world. I pray in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about myself and what I do. I am, my name is Paul Morgan. I am the maintenance director at Indiana Academy. And my family and I moved here only about a year and a half ago from Oregon. Not Oregon, not a state, Oregon. And so we took the job here at Indiana Academy. It's been a real blessing. And there's definitely been some struggles with vehicles and other things that come along with it. But I also teach the Intro to Tech class. It's a freshman class, so anybody that's going to be moving into the Indiana Academy, going into the high school. And so I brought some of the things. So it's still always going to be a work in progress as I fine-tune the curriculum over the years. But one of the things that we did this last year was we did some circuit boards with TTL circuits. And we had a 10-second timer that we constructed out of these using some wires and some chips. And we put that together. I also had the students, each student had a chance to install their own electrical outlet, actual working outlet. We were remodeling a house. That's actually the house that my family and I moved into. And so I took the risk for myself and had the students all take a turn, and they all remodeled, helped remodel the house in some way or another, at least with doing some electrical in a couple of the rooms. And any chance we get, we talk about some of the other stuff. I try to save old parts and show them some of the old parts, and we talk about motors and things like that. We do some construction, and we do some other just hands-on stuff. I try to make it as hands-on as possible for the students. They spend a lot of time behind books, and it's good for them to work with their hands. It's good to learn a little bit to work with your hands, just for your own independence as well. And I just want to say something about Adventist schools in general. And that, I was watching a clip from a, let's see if I can get this, there we go. I was watching a clip from a newsreel, just a little 10-minute segment. And I didn't watch the whole thing, but it was starting to get a little beyond what I cared to learn about. But then this clip is talking about the game Dungeons and Dragons. I don't know if any of you are aware of that. It's something that started back in the 70s. And anyways, it's a fantasy game and stuff like that. And they're talking about how people used to think it was a bad thing, and now we've learned to accept it. And now we actually use it in schools to help students learn imagination and processes and all this other, just nonsense. If you're not aware of this game, Dungeons and Dragons is very evil in its content. Anyways, what I'm getting at is that you see around you, the secular world is embracing more and more stuff. And if there's ever a need for more and more Adventist education, it is today. It's not a perfect system. I can testify that, but it is still a wonderful life to have in this dark days that we are living in. And there are some wonderful people working in public schools, but it is getting harder and harder to draw the line and go still to secular schools. So it's been a wonderful experience at Indiana Academy, and if any of you are coming there next year, I look forward to seeing you. I get to abuse all the freshmen in my intro tech class, so you're mine for at least a year. But there's been some wonderful experiences there. Get to share things there that you don't get to share in public schools. And you do get to see children and students growing and changing through their time there. So that's just Indiana Academy in a nutshell, more or less. If you want to talk a little bit more about that, I'd be more than happy to discuss some of that, what we do and some of the programs and so forth there at the school. But that's not what I'm going to talk about all of today. As you saw, the sermon title is Faith of a Dead Man. I also have to note that my dog ate my church shoes a few weeks ago. So if you're wondering why I'm wearing sneakers, it's not so that I can run away when the sermon is over. Because that's what my dog left me with. But sermon title is Faith of a Dead Man. And if you will, please turn with me to Matthew 14, verses 28. We're going to start with a very familiar story. Here's the amen. Matthew 14, starting at verse 28. So here's a page just turning. Peter said to him, Lord, if it is you, command me to come to you on the water. And he said, come. And Peter got out of the boat and walked on the water and came toward Jesus. But seeing the wind, he became frightened, and beginning to sink, he cried out, Lord, save me. Immediately Jesus stretched out his hand and took hold of him and said to him, you of little faith, why did you doubt? Pretty familiar story to us. They are out on the ocean, or not the ocean, they're out in the water, and they see Jesus coming. And Peter, the ever impulsive one, wants to go out there and join him on the water as well. And it doesn't go so well for Peter. I'm going to share a couple other stories real fast. One of them is kind of lighthearted. Well, I guess they're both lighthearted in a sense, but we have some pretty beautiful parks. Indiana has some beautiful areas. Where I'm from in Oregon has some pretty beautiful areas as well. And one of them that we really like is Crystal Springs Rhododendron Garden. And so if you're ever out in Portland, you should try to make it to that. It's a beautiful area, well maintained, lots of flowers, and it's just absolutely gorgeous. There's lots of birds at this place as well, and you'll see lots of ducks, lots of geese, and a lot of other animals. And so there was this one time that we were out there, and it was just a casual walk, and I looked out on the water, and there on the water there was a duck, and behind the duck was her little babies, about 5 or 6 of them, and they were all just following their mommy, and obediently following her in a line. And I just happened to look down there, and there was a big old goose. And it came up to one of the little baby ducks, and it pet one of those little baby ducks. And I tell you, not before or since have I seen a duck get as animated as that mama duck suddenly got animated and turned around, and that goose was suddenly running for its life, and it took off. There was another time, and when I was much younger, I was probably only about 6 or 7 at the time, and I'm not sure, but around that time. And when you're young, you're impressionable, and you see stuff, and it gets locked into your mind. They say young minds are like sponges. And I saw somebody, and I don't know if it was in a show that we were watching, or if it was in real wonderful life, I can't remember where I saw this, but I saw somebody give somebody else a gesture. It was not a kind gesture, but it involved raising a hand and then raising a finger. And so I just kind of filed that away as a kid. And then one day, my brother had a friend over. And they were playing inside the house. And I was playing right outside the house in the backyard. And my friend's brother, much older than me, he kept making fun of me. And I didn't like it. And so this is when I remembered the reaction that that one gesture got when that one person used it. And so I thought, well, maybe this is the time where I should use that gesture. And so I did. And I gave that gesture to the young man in the house. And suddenly that young man was not in the house, but he was climbing out the window to come get me, and I took off running. And if it wasn't for my mom suddenly there, I was dead meat. I'm sharing you these stories because we have to recognize something. That we understand the care and the sympathy that parents have for our children. We even understand the care and sympathy that we can have for each other when somebody is in need or somebody is in trouble. But I honestly believe that we struggle when it comes to totally understanding that God will always intervene on our behalf. So let's turn to Matthew 21:22, please. And go there. Matthew 21:22. And all things you ask in prayer, believing, you will receive. Amen. This is, I think, a difficult text for us. I know, personally, it has been a difficult text for myself. Because it seems too good to be true. And it seems too wonderful to grasp. And I see in the lives of many Christians that they also think that it's too good to be true and too difficult to grasp. I see some dilemmas that we have with this verse. And we're going to go through those dilemmas. First dilemma we will find in John 16:24. You don't have to turn there, but I will go there. I hope you don't mind. We're going to be jumping around the Bible today. John 16. Final moments of Christ. One of the most beautiful moments. If you don't know where to start to read in the Bible someday, I always go to John 15 through 17. John 16:24. Until now, Jesus is talking to the disciples, until now you have asked for nothing in my name. Ask, and you will receive, so that your joy may be full. So one of the dilemmas that we have, it's just a pretty obvious one. Maybe we are just not asking. And I believe that means for the small things, the little things, big things. Some of the most amazing miracles sometimes are the little things as we ask for it. And then we're surprised that it happens. And it's unfortunate sometimes that we are surprised that God answers our prayer. I think that we should be expecting God to answer our prayers. So maybe one of our dilemmas is simply that we do not ask. We teach our kids to ask nicely, ask politely. But are we even taking the time to ask God for things? In James 4:3, we have another dilemma. In James 4, he talks a lot about asking with the wrong motives. And so maybe that's another dilemma that we have. Maybe we ask with the wrong kind of heart. Maybe we ask for the wrong things. But this isn't as complicated as we make it either. We don't have to worry about this one so much either. Because you see, in Psalms 139, David says, let's turn there actually right now. Psalms 139:23. 139. Verses 23 and 24. Psalms 139, 23 and 24. If we worry about what we want, if you are worried about where your heart is, come to this verse. Search me, O God, and know my heart. Try me and know my anxious thoughts. And see if there be any hurtful way in me. And lead me in the way everlasting. Ezekiel 36:26. God promises to take away our hearts of stone and give us hearts of flesh. So even if we are worried about our motives when we are praying, even if we are worried about what we want or what we don't want, we really don't have to worry about that either. We can, like the psalmist, go to God and say, Dear God, just search my heart today. And I hope that we are doing that on a daily basis, if not even an hourly basis. We can take our heart and give it to God, whatever shape it is in, and God will take care of it, no matter the circumstances. He promised, and I will believe that He is faithful to fulfill His promises.
Amen.
Amen. So, we go through those dilemmas pretty quickly. And honestly, I don't think they're as big as this last dilemma. And this is what I'm going to spend a few minutes on today. And that is the issue of our faith. I know as a young man I had my own moments of questioning things about whether I was good enough, whether God was listening, whether God was really concerned about my well-being. The more I know about God, the more I feel ashamed for any moment of doubt. So I want to go back to our original passage that we shared with Peter. You don't have to turn there, but I just want to go back and discuss it. Because we have Peter sinking in the water. And I'm going to ask this question because it's an important question, because it's something that I have to ask myself once in a while in my daily struggles. How great was Peter's faith at that moment in time? I want you to think about this for a minute. We have Peter who is drowning. He was walking out on the water. He had it all figured out, so to speak. And then he looked at the waves, and he started drowning. So how big was Peter's faith at that point? Was that the pinnacle of the man's faith at that point in time? I sure hope that that was not. I do not think that when we get to heaven and ask Peter when was the pinnacle of his faith, when was his faith the strongest, he is not going to go back to the time when he was almost completely underwater and say, well, that was when my faith was the strongest. And you see, this question is an important question to ask because it leads into another thing. Because if Peter's faith was pretty pathetic right then, did he have to take a moment and say, God save me, I'll promise I'll do more on tithe. Dear God save me, I promise I will do more at church. Dear God save me, I promise I will eat better. He had only one thing on his mind. And fortunately, to his credit, he always knew this, that Christ was going to be there for him. And I think that we forget that. That God is always going to intervene on our behalf. Now, Christ did rebuke him and pulled him out of the water and told him point blank that he had very little faith. Why did you doubt, Peter? But you see, the thing is, even when Peter had that moment of failure, the second that he called out, God still was there. And God still rescued him. There's one more story that we're going to go on. And I like this story as well. It's one of my favorite stories. It's just because I feel like it gives a good summary of the gospel. And I'll explain why. So our last passage today will be John 8, 1 through 11. Gospel of John 8, 1 through 11. I'll start in verse 2 here. Early in the morning, he came again to the temple, and all the people were coming to him. And he sat down and began to teach them. The scribes and the Pharisees brought a woman caught in adultery. Having set her in the center of the court, they said to him, Teacher, this woman has been caught in adultery in the very act. Now in the law of Moses commanded us to stone such women. What then do you say? They were saying this, testing him, so that they might have grounds for accusing him. But Jesus stooped down and with his finger wrote on the ground. But when they persisted in asking him, he straightened up and said to them, He who is without sin among you, let him be the first to throw a stone. Again he stooped down and wrote on the ground. When they heard it, they began to go out one by one, beginning with the older ones, and he was left alone, and the woman where she was in the center of the court. Straightening up, Jesus said to her, Woman, where are they? Did no one condemn you? And she said, No one, Lord. And Jesus said, I do not condemn you either. Go from now on, sin no more. I love this story. I love this story because we have to recognize something for ourselves so that we can recognize it for others. That throughout this world's history, throughout our personal history, and until the very end of this world, we have judgment, we have the sinner, and in the middle, forever, we have Christ on our behalf. This woman was as good as dead. This case probably worse than Peter's because here's somebody that's spiritually dead. caught in an act of sin. Although you can say doubt was probably just as much of a sin. What was her faith? Do you think that her faith was at the pinnacle? Do you think that we will go to Mary and say, when was your faith the greatest? And she will say at this point when she thought that she was going to die. When she thought that her life had caught up with her. And now there was nothing but condemnation. I want you guys to understand something. Because at this point, she was at the mercy of a loving Savior. The people that were going to throw stones, were they any better off? None of them are alive today. They were as good as dead also. But they were hypocrites. And even though that they were in the presence of Christ, just like this woman, they walked away with their guilt and their shame. But here, Christ released this sinner and set her free. So let me tell you something. If people come at you with accusations, when Satan points his finger to judge you, when demons try to take you by the shoulder to pull you to the ground, you can tell them that I know what I deserve. I know what I should get. But I also know the one who died for me. The one who shed his blood for me. And I am most precious in his eyes. The faith of a dead man. Hey, we're all dead people. I'm not trying to be macabre here. But raise your hand if you think you're going to live for 1,000 years. Well, trick question. Raise your hand if you think you're going to live 1,000 years without Christ. That's probably a better way to put it. Thank you for keeping me honest. But all out there is dead people too. We don't need to worry about whether or not God is there. Because the moment that we call for Him, He is there. In fact, He is always there. The only time Jesus cannot save us. Does anyone know the only time that Jesus cannot save us? There is one time that Jesus cannot save us. It's when we do not want to be saved. So don't worry. That doesn't give us a free pass to do as we please. Like I said, every day we ought to be going to God and asking Him that He search our hearts. Every day it ought to be our longing to spend time with Him and maybe put the phone down, or maybe put the computer down, or maybe even be a little less busy at work and find time to be with God. The only time that He cannot save us is when that we say that we want this world, and I do not understand why people make this choice, but when somebody says, I want this world more than Jesus Christ, that is the only time that He's not going to come in. We don't have to worry. We got to stop being so afraid. God's not calling people to carry the cross with uncertainty of their own salvation. We should go forward with courage, with joy, and reach those that are also out there dead. Peter was drowning. Mary was about to get stoned. God to say to them, how much more is He going to say to people that desire to do the right thing? I just want to say thank you for letting me come out here and share this and fellowship with you today. I pray that this church be a light in this community, in this area of Indiana, because light is very needed this day. This world is getting just boiled down to hatred and sin. But let us all go forward with certainty, knowing that God is on our side and that nothing should be able to stand against us as long as we are submitting ourselves to Him and wanting to do what is best according to His word. Hymn of Consecration, 529. Heavenly Father, you have come here, and you have died for us. You are coming back for us. Let us be our constant hope. Let that be our constant strength. Let us not fret and worry. But let us spend each day submitted to your wonderful Spirit, to the joy and the love that comes from serving you. Let it shine from us in such obvious light that those around us will want what we have. And bless this church, and let your Spirit be here, and to be with all of us. Thank you, Heavenly Father, for caring for us. Thank you for considering us, for thinking about us. Heavenly Father, this seems too wonderful, too good to be true. Let us have faith and know that it is.